everyone. Diane Nix here at the Women's Expo from Indianapolis, Indiana. And we're doing what we've been doing the last several years, and that is recording podcasts at the SBC Women's Expo. And I am excited this year to have someone new join us, and that is Stacy Hollingsworth. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, ma'am, you did.
And she is a part of the Esther Project shop, and she is the founder and CEO of this ministry, and I want to have her just share what that ministry is and what it's all about and how she got it started. I want her to take it and run with it. So let's hear about you.
Okay, so the Esther Project shop is a way to provide a sustainable income to our artisans in Kenya to prevent human trafficking. It all started when I was doing I started doing medical clinics, and we wanted to do a women's health symposium in Kenya. And that was going to look a little bit different. Yeah. It was going to, instead of just the medical clinic, we wanted to do teaching along with it. Okay. And so they got the medical clinic part, and obviously they got a Bible study, but we've taught women's health, we've taught prenatal care, we've taught on abuse, you name it, we've taught on it over the years. Okay. But the second year they wanted me, because of my background, I'm a forensic psychologist by profession, and they wanted me to teach on human trafficking. And I know human trafficking here in the U.S., but I did not know human trafficking in Kenya, so I had to do some research. And what I discovered was that the average Kenyan woman tries to feed her family on less than $2 a day. Now, that's average. A lot of our artisans live in a place called Kibera. It's the largest slum in all of Africa. It's not quite 2 square miles, and almost 3 million people live there. They don't get to...
I'm speechless.
Yeah, it is hard to even wrap your head around.
I really am trying to wrap my mind around that. And if you've shared that with me before, I have forgotten that, because that makes me want to stop and just cry right now.
Yeah.
Because I can't even imagine. I know what the slums are like in Accra, but I can't even imagine what the slums are like in that particular
it is unbelievable.
Space.
And the women there don't even get $2 a week, much less a day. So because of the economic instability, there's over 50 kids a week trafficked in Kenya.
50 kids a week?
A week. Over 50 kids a week, yes.
Oh, wow.
And so when I started teaching that, the Lord said, you got to do something about this. And I don't know what anybody else's relationship with God is, but we've had an understanding for 50-something years, and that is He's going to ask me to do something, and I'm going to argue about it, and He's going to win. But we're always going to have that arguing section. And so we argued about it because I didn't know what to do, and I don't know anything about business, and that's just not my thing.
Tell me you're...
A forensic psychologist?
Yes, that's what you do.
Yes, ma'am. And, give me a dead body and I'm good to go, but ask me to run a business and I have no clue. And the Lord is like, you've got friends. And so I'm like, okay, well, let me talk to them. And so I started talking to my friends, but I knew I had to have a website. And
wow,
I knew that would be the big expense. And I thought, okay, I don't know if you ever feel like, I know I can never win the war with God, but sometimes I feel like I could win a battle. And this website thing I thought was going to be my battle, okay? And I went and talked to a guy, and I knew how expensive it was because I had talked to GoDaddy and places like that, and it was just far more than I had. And a friend of mine said, well, I've got a friend at church that does it. I don't know what he charges. And so I went and talked to him. And he says, well, let me think about it and pray about it. And I said, okay, that's fine. And I thought, okay, here's my out. And so he called me a couple of days later, and he said, I've been thinking about it and praying about it. And he said, I'm going to do that for you for free.
Wow.
And I went, okay, well, God, I guess we're doing this then, aren't we? And so 4 years ago, we became a nonprofit, and we started with 5 women. Those 5 women in 4 years have grown into 289 artisans.
Wow.
We now have a rescue home for children we've removed from trafficking, and we partner with the only 2 free schools in Kenya. And so, I really need God to slow His roll sometimes. We were in Kissy, where our soapstone is made. We have since added men because culturally there's certain things women cannot do.
Right.
And products we carry is soapstone, for example. Well, the women can paint it and design it and sand it, but they cannot harvest it and they cannot carve it. And I had a whole village.
Is that because it's too hard?
No,
or?
it's because culturally that is not a woman's job.
Okay.
And so I had a whole village call me, and they said, we've heard what you're doing in Kenya. We live where they make soapstone. We're having trouble feeding our kids. We can't send them to school. Would you partner with us if we made the soapstone? And I said, sure, but here's my rules. Number one, if you tell me you make something, I'm coming to your house, and you're going to make it. Because we pay fair trade prices. Our artisans set their prices. We don't do any bargaining now.
Right.
I love to bargain with the best of them.
Right.
I lived in Senegal for many years, and I love to bargain.
Right.
But we don't bargain with them. And I said, so you're going to show me you're making it.
Right.
And you're not paying someone slave wages to make it. And number two, if you're a man and you're working in our program, you have to show me on a day-to-day basis that you're providing for your families. Because just like here in the U.S., unfortunately, many of the women are tasked with raising and feeding their families.
Right.
And so that's how we got started with them. And I had gone down and was buying vegetables just on the side of the road. And I always try to buy it from the women that are selling on the side of the road. And we had all these vegetables, and it was just me and Nicholas, who helps me when I'm not there. And they're kind of looking at all this stuff and looking at me. And I'm like, okay, we have a rescue home, and this is for the rescue home. Because I didn't want them to think I was going to buy it and then sell it for more when I got to Nairobi.
Right.
And they went, well, we've got orphans and don't have an orphanage. And I went, oh, okay, because I don't know what you say to that.
Yeah.
And then my ADHD brain kicked in and said, you better say something else. And so it went from bad to worse. And I said, well, what do you do with them? And they said,
wow.
well, we try to kind of take them in, but most of them, they just go out on the streets. And then she said, we'll give you some land if you'll build an orphanage here. And she laughed, and I laughed, and we all laughed, and I thought we were having a good time. Well, but she said this 3 or 4 times. And I finally looked at Nicholas, and I'm like, is she serious? And he goes, I'm beginning to wonder. And so
And Nicholas was?
Nicholas is Kenyan, and
he was your interpreter?
He is my, we were in Swahili, and I said, you need to change. So he switched to Kissy and started speaking to them in Kissy, and he said, she thinks you're serious. And they said, we are. We can show you the land right now. And I said, well, I can't see it right now. I'll be back in May. This was in February. I said, I'll be back in May. And I said, I'll look at it then. And I'm like, Lord, I'm trying to figure out how to get money to ship this stuff, and
Yes.
you're wanting me to build an orphanage. I need you to slow down just a little bit, you know. And, of course, I get back, and I tell my board, and they're like, we're doing what? And I said, I don't know. And
that's what my board says a lot.
I said, I didn't buy vegetables and ask for a side of land. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. And so we go back in May, and they're like, no land. And I'm like, no land, not a problem, no land. And so we went and saw that piece of land. It's a beautiful piece of land. And then we're at the Maasai. We work with the Maasai tribe, and I had a board member with me, thank goodness. And we bought stuff from the women and that they've prepared. And Nicholas was talking to the pastor of the village, and he came back, and he was grinning like a Cheshire cat, And I said, well, y'all must have had a good conversation. He said, we did. They're building a church, and he went through all this. And I said, that's awesome. But, he was a little more excited than he should have been. Not that he shouldn't be excited about the church, but, it did not affect him to that level.
Yes.
And so I said, you're awful excited for that. And he said, you're never going to believe what he said after that. And I said, what? And they said, well, we're going to have some extra land after the church is over. And he says, I was wondering if you thought Stacy would want it if I gave it to her. And I went and looked at my board member who was standing behind me like, I'm not doing nothing. And he said, I went like for a school. And he said, whatever she wants to do with it. And he said, I went, well, like how much land? And he said, well, I think there'll be about 30 acres. And he said, I went, yeah, she wants it. And so we went and looked at it in September, and I was talking to the pastor's parents, who are the ones giving the land. And he said, he kept saying, I don't know why he told you 30 acres. I don't know why. And I'm like, I don't have to have 30 acres. And he said, I don't know why he told you 30 acres. He said, I've got 750 acres. Tell me what you want.
Stacy.
And I went, can I get back to you on that? And I said, I guess the best way to prevent trafficking is to provide an education. And we work with two tribes that still practice multiple marriages,
right?
And they practice female circumcision.
Wow.
And
wow.
Although it isn't my place to go in and change that, I hope through working with them we can change that.
Absolutely. And the real issue is you're going to have space. From what I'm hearing you say, that you don't know all that the Lord is going to do, but you're going to have the land to build a school and an orphanage and a place where not only will the gospel be shared and people's lives will be changed, but then you'll be able to educate those women.
Absolutely.
To have a trade to be able to provide for their children.
Absolutely.
And maybe even before they get married, before they have children, be able to provide for themselves in a way that nobody else has ever been able to teach them, that they're worth something, right?
Absolutely.
That they are valued as women to be able to do what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Wow, so all that you're doing here at the SBC, you brought product to sell. So every bit of that goes back to your artisans to help them to feed their families, and then for you to build an orphanage.
Yes, Actually, the money we make here goes to buy more products, because the products we have here, I've already paid for. I do not take anything on consignment. My artisans are paid for up front. That way, if we pick out a product that doesn't do well and it doesn't sell, that loss comes to me. It doesn't come to them. So, yes, it goes 96% of everything we make to buying more products. The difference goes to things like this, where we pay for booths or travel to get there. But yes, it all goes back to buying more. That's how we have gone from 5 people to 289 people.
So, so at the end of the day, so you have 289 artisans. At the end of the day, at the end of this season of your life, how many years have you been doing the Esther Project shop?
4 years.
4 years, and all of this has happened. Everything that you just shared with me
has happened in 4 years.
In 4 years.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
Yes, ma'am.
You need to start looking for legacy, girl. You need to start.
Yes, ma'am.
Sustainability.
Yes, ma'am.
This is a roller coaster ride.
It
right?
is a roller coaster ride. Yes, it is.
Because how long? Now, you and I spoke just really briefly, and we're going completely off script from what I shared the questions for you. But I think this is appropriate for us because you can use this for any way you want to use it in the future. So, what are we looking as far as timeline for building? Since we've spoken very beginning, have you completed acquisition of land? Building for since we've spoken
we're
very
still in the process. It is a very long process.
Completed
Okay. Anytime land is exchanged, anybody that has a say to that land has to sign off on it.
Okay.
Once they sign off on it, you have to get the chief of that tribe's approval for it. Once you get that approval, then you bring a surveyor in and they cut out that part, and then you take it to the government. We're waiting on the surveyor to come to survey out the pieces of land. And I was at a church and a lady said, "So do you have the money for the schools?" And I went, "No, ma'am, I don't." And she goes, "Well, where are you getting it?" I said, "I'm hoping God's got a plan," because I did not have a plan. The school was not my plan. The rescue home was not my plan. I was hoping I didn't have a plan, but just to kind of share the magnitude of the Maasai land, Beatrice, who runs the rescue home, when I went and told her, she started crying, and I said, "I know there's an area she has a real heart for, and that we get a lot of children from there for the rescue home." And she said, "No, you don't understand." She said, "The first 2 children I received, I took into my own home. It was 2 little Maasai girls that a lady called her and said, 'We've got these 2 young girls that their mother has sold them to over 100 men apiece. And they need reconstructive surgery, and I don't know what to do.'" And Beatrice wound up taking them in the home. And she said, "There's a few things I don't think you understand." She said, "First of all, I don't think you understand the Maasai do not accept people into their tribe." And she said, "To be honest, I have no idea why they've accepted you." She said, "But obviously they have." And she said, "Second of all, you cannot get land from the Maasai." And she said, "What you don't know is 10 years ago when I took these 2 little girls in my home," she said, "I started praying and asking God to give me a way into the Maasai to work with those young girls." And she said, 10 years later, He's done it through you. She said, so these are tears of joy, not tears of disappointment. And, you know, of course, those two girls are grown now. And it's an amazing, I am so humbled that God allows me to even be a part of what He's doing.
So you've just shared the last question, which was a personal question of what the ministries cost you. And I think you would say just time.
Mm-hmm.
And
time in my retirement.
And your retirement.
Yes, ma'am.
And really and truly, nowhere in Scripture do we see retirement.
Exactly.
Really. And we're going to work until the day Jesus calls us home, right? You, my friend, have worked and are working to do something that the tragedy of how our children are being. You went from a secular job of looking and watching children be horribly abused, taken advantage of, and even sometimes murdered or killed, to doing something real tangibly for the kingdom that's going to make an eternal difference.
You know,
so thank you.
Thank you. And, you know, I think all of that came from when I left Senegal sick and I wound up in a secular job. I'm like, God, I don't know what I'm supposed to tell these people. And He said, your theme is going to be, you tell them I am. And, you know, that's really what our job is.
Yes.
Is that I am has sent me, and He loves you, and you have worth.
Wow. Well, I think that's a good way to end this segment of our podcast, that I am has sent us. He sees us, and He will use a usable vessel just as He sees fit to use us if we make ourselves available to Him. And we will not win the argument
No,
that we put
not.
up if He's got a job for us to do. Thank you so much, Stacy.
Thank you so much.
God bless you. And tomorrow we start bright and early as we are going to continue these podcasts. I can't wait to connect with you.